Welcome back. I'm Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown, all published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today I'm going to be reviewing, quite frankly, one of my least favorite Louis L'Amour novels, and that is Sitka. You know I love Louis L'Amour. I mean, I got the whole Louis L'Amour collection back here. Got the entire Sackett. Got the entire Sackett saga. Got all the other Louis L'Amour novels. Man, I love Louis L'Amour. I'm from Alaska. I grew up in Fairbanks. You'd think that a Louis L'Amour novel written about Sitka, Alaska would be right up my alley. But you would be wrong. I remember reading this as a kid thinking, oh, it's going to be great. I grew up in Fairbanks. We moved from Fairbanks when I was a kid. We moved from Fairbanks down to southern Utah, down to real Louis L'Amour Western country. So I was like reading a lot of Louis L'Amour Westerns living in Sevier County, Utah, which has the landscape of every Louis L'Amour Western. And then I'm like, oh, he wrote a novel about Alaska. Well, I used to live there too. I'm going to read it. Even back then, I remembered I just didn't care for it as much as the rest of his books. So we'll get into that a little bit why, okay? But first, we always review the covers. I have got 2 copies. I don't know why. I have 2 copies of Sitka. But we've got these 2 covers, and I love graphic design. I love illustration. I review all of the book covers on the Louis L'Amour books because I love the old Western paintings. And I think that the graphic design and stuff on these are also done pretty well. This is a Greg Manches painting. He's done a lot of the more modern Louis L'Amour books, like he's done all of the Sackett saga. His style is very, 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 very unique, very loose. He's a great illustrator. He does a lot of fantasy illustrations, a lot of science fiction illustrations, and he's done a lot of these Louis L'Amour books. This one's a little more straightforward. It's just sort of a photo of some mountains and the bay that's probably around Sitka. I don't know how accurate that photo is, but I don't know which one I like best. It's kind of a toss-up. I like this one for the ship, the pirate ship, the Russian ship, whatever it is, ship. I mean, I think that's a great striking image. Very simple design. I like this one also just because it's totally different from every other Louis L'Amour cover. And it's got this nice gold embossed Sitka right here. So it's a toss-up between them. I like them both. But let's talk about the story itself. Oh, the book already knows I'm going to be a little negative about it, so it threw itself on the floor. But I still have this one in hand. Why is Sitka, which you would think, me being from Alaska, you would think that I would have loved this? Well, let me tell you why. It's just sort of an average novel for me, whereas most everything else Louis L'Amour does is spectacular in my book. Sitka falls short in that it's just an epic, epic story that needed about 1,000 pages to be told in. And he's told it in about 250 pages. So what I'm getting at is we've got our main character, and this was written in about 1957, so it's probably one of his earlier novels. This is about a guy named Jean Labarge who's down from the swamps of Louisiana, I gather. Nothing's ever really clear in this novel where people are at any given moment, so it's a little confusing, and that's probably one of the things that I didn't like about it. Is I was expecting a novel set in Sitka, Alaska, and I bet you only about 1/5 of the novel is about Sitka itself. The rest of it, the first 100 pages are certainly about Mr. Labarge in Louisiana, or so I think it's Louisiana, we're never told. Wherever the Susquehanna River is. I probably could Google that and figure it out. So if y'all know where that Susquehanna River is, it might be in Pennsylvania, it might be in upper state New York, I don't know. Might be down in Arkansas or Missouri or... But he's living in the swamps near the Susquehanna River, and he just dreams of being a trapper. mean, this is the early 1800s. He wants to be a big name trapper like Jim Bridger and all that. But he's like, man, I don't want to just go to the West. I want to go to the last frontier. I want to go to Alaska to do my trapping. And so he kind of takes a meandering path up to Alaska, where he stops in San Francisco. I mean, we spend a lot of time in San Francisco. He gets involved with a lot of historical characters like Seward, Baranoff. He gets involved in the entire land purchase of Alaska from America when they bought Alaska from the Russians. There's a lot of the story told from the Russian point of view, where they're just like, let's get rid of Alaska. We want to get rid of Alaska before we have to fight for it. They're like, we're probably going to end up fighting the Americans for this. Let's just sell it to them before we get into a fight. And so a lot of this book is just taking up by these grand events, which I thought needed like 1,000 pages to tell. Kind of like James Michener's novel, Alaska, which I think did a better job of this, where it's just such a big, huge, I mean, Alaska is such a huge place. It's the last frontier, folks. It's just so huge. And Louis L'Amour does such a great job of capturing the hugeness of the West in these novels here, and the bleakness of the deserts and the alpine mountains and the pristine everything. And he just seems to fall short in every single way of describing anything about Alaska like that in Sitka. It's just kind of like a rough sketch of what should be an epic story, where Mr. LaBarge goes to Alaska, has all these epic adventures, but it seems like most of the story is taking place between St. Petersburg, Russia, and San Francisco, and Oregon, and Louisiana, and different places, and we never get to spend much time in Alaska at all. I think that's why I was disappointed when this, and it's a much lower than average. I mean, because if you've been following my Louis L'Amour reviews, I love this dude. And this could have been so awesome. And maybe if he'd have written it later in life and spent some more time on it, like he did with, Comstock Lode and The Walking Drum and things like that. But man, this just flies by too quick. It's a series, it's a book, a subject that needs an epic canvas to tell. And it's too short. It just flew by. I don't think I learned anything about Alaska that I didn't already know. I've been to Alaska. I can envision. I've been to these places. I know them. And I love every other Louis L'Amour book more than I like this one. I wanted to reread it. I remember reading it as a kid and being mighty disappointed. I have not read it since. I thought I would reread it for these reviews to see if I could come at it from a new, fresher, more adult perspective. And it did the same thing for me now that it did back then. So I'm going to give it about a 4.5 out of 10. Which is a below average review for me. And I don't normally give below average reviews, except on big name authors like Stephen King and Louis L'Amour, where they're my favorite authors, and 99% of the stuff that I read from them I love. So I don't mind giving one or two books sort of a, kind of in the, don't mind, because I'm not really hurting their bottom line. They're already multimillionaires. And I love everything else that they've done, so I can forgive myself for just not liking one or two things that they do. And Sitka is one of those. Like I'd say, I would recommend every other Louis L'Amour novel out there. And you might like this. I imagine most people like it. I just wanted more. I wanted bigger, more epic. I wanted more. And thank God there's 90 other Louis L'Amour novels that I can turn to get that. So, Sitka. Read at your own discretion.